think you need a new timer.
No, I'm always ready. I know that when the hi-hat starts hitting on the upbeat, I got 10 seconds.
That thing gets worse and worse every single time I play it. We're gonna have to get into it. Anyway, that's not the point of this show. This is the state of leadership, simple and beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitnie Wiley, and we are here talking all things leadership. It's Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, and we welcome you to the show. So, today we're going to be talking about ethical leadership. And the title of the show is Why You Are Not an Ethical Leader, right? Why you are not an ethical leader. And the reason that you are not is probably, I'm going to say this, is probably because one of the things that goes into this, and we'll talk about what ethical leadership is, why it's important, and what you can do to do it better. But probably the reason that you're not is consistency. I'm going to just throw that out there right now, right? Consistency across the areas, the aspects of this leadership approach that we're going to be talking about. It's probably due to consistency. There may be other reasons, but I'm going to hazard to guess that consistency is probably the reason why not. But the good news with that is, in order to turn that around, is to do what? Be consistent. So, Robert, opening thoughts.
We see a lot of examples of leadership in general, or I should say, we see a lot of examples of people who are called leaders, and
people in charge of other people.
People in charge of other people. I'm not so sure they should be called leaders, and that's what really drew me to this topic, because I feel that in order to be a real leader, you need to be ethical.
Right. We've got lots of things. We've got ethics, we've got empathy, there are a number of different things that as a leader we are called to be. And so let's get started with this aspect. So what is ethical leadership? And I think Robert, well, I don't think, I know, because he told me this when he suggested this as a topic. I'm like, why? He said, you teach ethics.
You teach ethics.
I was like, yeah. And I do. I teach ethics, a university course to MBA students, business law, ethics, and corporate social responsibility. And so one of the things I'm going to do in the course of this is talk about one of the assignments that the students have. And they've got, it's an 8-week course. There are a number of assignments throughout the course of, obviously, for students, there's a lot of work to do, particularly in an MBA program. But there's one particular assignment that they have, and we just finished the week that assignment was in. So it's top of mind. I finished grading the papers a few days ago, and I kept running across this reoccurring theme. And it was about ethical leadership. It was about ethical decision making. And I think that's sort of where we can start this conversation. So ethical leadership basically is having individuals behave according to a set of principles and values that are recognized as a sound basis for common good, right? So the point is, and Robert can offer up his own definition, but the goal is and this is not a matter of right or wrong, right? But it's a matter of making sound decisions, taking sound actions that are in alignment with principles and values. And so we talk about principles and values here on the State of Leadership a lot, about corporate values and individual values. And this becomes one of the reasons that it's important that there's alignment with this. Because if there's no alignment, and your values and the principles that you live by and the values that you operate under are different from the corporations, then it's easy to run afoul of them, right? And so in a lot of respects, and here's the challenge with ethics and ethical leadership, is that those principles and values can change company to company, culture to culture, right? Country to country. And so what is considered, and here are the component parts: integrity, respect, trust, fairness, transparency, and honesty. Those things can change. And so in order to be ethical, working in Robert's company may be a little different than the ethics in Whitney's company, right? Robert Inc. and Whitney Co. They may be a little different. There's some similarities, as there are across, humanity. And that becomes, how are we going to look at this? How are we going to look at our ethical leadership? Are we going to do it on a company by company basis, or we're going to take steps back and do it more on a humanitarian, on the level of humanity, which is where I try to operate, right? Which allows me, I think, to be more consistent. I am not perfect. Just put that out there right now. I am not perfect in this. But by taking a bigger picture view and operating from a perspective of humanity rather than the subsets of any particular group that I'm in, it allows me to be more consistent. Otherwise, you have to constantly pay attention to the community that you're in. And I think we're seeing a lot of a lack of ethical leadership in our country, in America in particular. I would imagine we don't have, what are they called? The word, statistics, right? What do you call them for this? They don't call it statistics. What do you say? What do you say?
Data points?
No, the data for people who watch the show, right? I don't have that.
Demographics.
Demographic. I don't have that from the platforms that this is on. I suppose I could track them down, but I don't have them. So I'm imagining that we have global audience. We have a global audience, but primarily in America, right? We both live in the United States. I'm on the West Coast. You're on the East Coast. The ethics of our country are a little different than other places. But what I'm seeing in politics, in terms of leadership, right? A decided lack of ethical leadership, right? People just doing their own thing because it works for them rather than working for the common good. And that's what we're talking about. And then we've got groups that are splintering off, no different than working in different companies, right? Where groups are splintering off and they are doing what's good for their community, for the common good of their community, rather than all of us as a whole. And so for me, that becomes one of the challenges of ethical leadership. And we can talk about, here are the component parts, but to say to do this or to pay attention to this aspect without acknowledging, the challenges that come along with this, I think would be a disservice to you and the rest of the audience.
Right. So I think one of the things that come up for me is, as a leader, what are you willing to take a principled stand on when you work in an organization? I think that's the one of the big components, because I have a story. I remember, and I'm not going to mention any names. I never do that. I don't, I don't want anybody who I used to work with or any organizations that I used to work for think that, oh, he's talking about us. But I was in a situation years ago where something needed to happen in an organization in order for us to be eligible to have a certain level of to meet a certain regulation, I should say. And a lot of the people that were in this organization had left the organization, and it put the manager, the person that was in charge of getting all this compliance information, in a very, very difficult situation. And so I'm not going to tell you which side of the road that he took, but I want to put this out there as a conundrum. So he had had to make a decision whether or not he should admit that we didn't have certain, we didn't have the signatures, or forge signatures, write people, yeah, exactly, write people's signatures who no longer work for the organization. So, this was a conundrum. And I'm not going to say which road this person took. I'm not going to say that. But what I'm going to say is this is an ethical dilemma. So, but here's the thing. When you have principles, when you have a set of guidelines that you as an individual, as a leader, can tap into, you can then make a decision based on those principles. You can either say, okay, I'm going to I don't have these principles, so I'm going to do what the organization suggests, which is forge these documents. Or I can take a stand and say, look, these folks do not work for this organization any longer. Let's report that to the governing body that's looking to get these documents, and let them know that they are no longer here, and ask them, what can we do to bridge that gap? Like, what can we do, since these people no longer work and we did not know that you needed these documents? So and again, I'm not going to say which direction this person took, but I want to put this out there as an ethical dilemma. And these are the things, when we talk about ethics, these are the things that many leaders have to navigate in their careers. And these are some of the things that lead to leadership downfalls, or leaders leaving organizations saying, listen, I'm being asked to do this thing that I can't do. So being an ethical leader, it can be really hard when you're looking at, okay, if I don't do what's being suggested to me by the board or by the CEO, whoever the main decision maker of the organization, I may lose my job. But if I lose my job, at least I know I stood on a principle,
right?
And I can look myself in the face and take pride in myself that I did something that was courageous. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to take, it may seem like the easy way out, and just do what I'm being asked to do. And but here's the thing. By doing the thing that is not ethical, it may have an even, it may have a maybe worse implication, or consequence than losing your job, because I'd rather be out of a job than go to jail. So I mean, and you see that people sometimes, they don't have these principles, so they'll make what I'm going to say is that, in quotes, the wrong choice, and then they end up not only losing their job, but going to jail or being fined and things like that. So
but the other part is that you have to live with yourself, right? Sure. And when you start down that path, I hate to throw out this legal slippery slope term, right? But it becomes a slippery slope, because once you've done it and you've compromised your principles for something, it becomes easier to compromise your principles the next time. And particularly if someone is asking or directing you to do so, now they're saying, well, you did it before, why won't you do it now? And you don't have a good answer for that. And it becomes now this perpetuating thing. And then you are setting an example of that's how to behave. So, I love that you have to have your own set of principles, right? And Robert said this, and it goes back to what is your idea for who you are as a leader, who you are as a person. What's your vision for how you want to lead and interact and make decisions? If you decide up front that you want to do it in an ethical way, right, then you have to take the time to actually define what that means. And if that means always being honest and acting in integrity and, doing the fair thing, being just in the way you are interacting and disciplining your people, taking responsibility for your actions rather than throwing other people under the bus, being transparent with how you've made decisions, why you made decisions the way that you have, right? If you take the time to think about that up front, it'll be much easier to operate that way than if you don't. And you are then presented with situations which challenge your principles, your sense of ethics, as it were. And while you may, as Robert said, you may hold on to this job in this moment, don't think that all the respect that you earned up until that moment doesn't go away, right? When people know that you are, because now you're not trustworthy. They don't know which way you're going to go. I can't follow a leader that they go with how the wind's blowing when they are looking out for themselves, right? And so making a decision, as you mentioned before, whichever way that person went, one way was about preserving them. The other way was more looking out for the greater good. Right. And which would include taking care of themselves, maybe not in the short term, but certainly in the long run.
I think the tricky part, Whitney, is that humans are incredibly adaptable. I mean, we have this survival instinct that allows us to, I'm going to say, I don't want to be controversial, we can rationalize many things. And we've all done it. I've done it myself. I've done things that, in my most waking sane hours, I would be like, oh, that was an awful thing. But you find ways. That's how we've survived for the centuries as a civilization, is by being remarkably adaptable when it comes to the things that we can rationalize.
Yeah.
And so, I try not to, I know I don't want to get too far off topic, but I try not to judge certain things too harshly when I see other people do things, because my philosophy, you've probably heard me say this because I repeat myself a lot, given the right stimulation, the right stimulus, humans are capable of nearly anything.
Yeah.
You may see somebody that commits a crime and go, I would never do that. You could. If the situation was right, you would do whatever that thing is. So the main thing is being aware of this capacity that we have of being incredibly adaptable and rationalizing so many things that we do, and to say, okay, I may have flexibility down here, but these are the 3 or 4 or 5 things that I absolutely will not bend on. And if you can, kind of have these things, and we talk about values a lot, and this is values, but slightly different, because we're not talking about your personal, this is how I live, my personal life. We're talking about in business. If these are the things that you will not, I will not lie. I'm just I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just putting that out there as one of them. Or I will not forge documents or do things like that. Then it's a lot easier to take a principled stance on things when it comes to these ethical dilemmas. And there are many ethical dilemmas that are out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It reminded me, I'm not a Star Trek fan.
I am.
Okay, Trekkie. So this will resonate with you, and you probably could do a better job with it. But when you were just talking, it made me think of this whole concept of the needs of the one. Do the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many? And these other ethical dilemmas, maybe not business related, but the questions that are posed, or these dilemmas that are posed, of allowing it, killing someone that you love to save millions, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
allowing someone that you love to die in order to save millions, or do you let millions die to save someone that you love, right? That we all have, maybe not to that extreme, and hopefully never to that extreme, but we all have these challenges, again, of where we're looking at something that matters to us as opposed to what's for the greatest good of the organization and all the people involved in the process. And so, right, that becomes part of, I think, justice and fairness and community, and how we choose to. And the good part of all of this is that it's a choice, right? It is difficult as that may be. The bottom line is we get to choose. And if you are willing to own your choice, even if the choice is wrong, right? If you're willing to own your choice, take responsibility for what you decide in the direction that you decide to do it, justified or not. And I agree with you. We are good at justifying what we want, why we've done what we do, rationalizing that, and seeing a lot of that in the world right now as well, right? People rationalizing why they're doing what they're doing because they want a particular outcome, and it doesn't matter anymore that it's not legal, it's not ethical, it's not moral, which are different things, but we don't care anymore that it's not that, because that stuff is getting in the way of what I want. And so all of this becomes a part of being conscious, and this is what you were saying earlier, right? Being an ethical leader is about being a conscious leader.
Yes.
Being aware of what you're thinking, what you're deciding, why you are deciding what you're deciding, right? And it wrapped up in all the factors that I mentioned earlier. So you cannot just sort of blindly go through your day without, if you are an ethical leader, without, when those dilemmas come before you, taking the time to analyze them. I don't know if analyze is the way I want to put it, but to lay them out against your principles, right? The principles upon which you want to make these decisions, and staying true. You said this a couple of times, willing to take a stand. What are you willing to take a stand on, right? Because you take that stand, you're living with that, and that is the example that follows you moving forward, and what people are going to, rightly or wrongly, what people are going to ultimately remember you by. And this is why, and we've said this over and over, this leadership is not easy. right? It's not for the faint of heart. It's not about just having a title. It's about making the hard choices and taking hard actions. And sometimes those are not in your personal best interest, right? And that's where sort of the rubber meets the road. That this is not, if you find yourself making choices, making decisions that are always about you, then you are not an ethical leader.
Right. So,
Right? I mean, if it's always going to be about you, your self-preservation, making you look good at the expense of others, right? And going back to your particular example, right? It would, however that turned out, but if the decision was about, I'm going to do what I have to do to save my job, and you're always making the choice, doing the calculus and making the choice to save your job, you need to really question whether you are in this leadership game for something other than yourself. And as we've defined leadership over the year, we've been doing this show for a year now, Robert.
Oh, wow. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. If you don't find yourself doing it for the team, the organization, right? That it's outside of you, you need to rethink. You just need to rethink being a leader.
But you know, and here's the thing. I think that you said something that really sparked a thought in my head. I think many of these people that have these positions don't consider themselves leaders. They just go, I am this title, right? So they have a title.
But that's our challenge here is,
right,
is to look beyond your title.
Right. It's like, I have the title, and my title entails me to do these things that are in line with the organization, whether the organization is, asking me to do something that may be seen, ethically ambiguous or not. That's my title is this. I work for this organization. Therefore, when they ask me to do things, I'm going to do that. They don't consider themselves, I don't think, a leader. Now, if you ask them, are you a leader and what type of leadership? They'll say, I have great leadership, especially if they're a man. I hate to, say that, but they would probably say that. I have great leadership. I have all these qualities, but I don't think that if you're a great leader, at some point there's going to be some friction. There's going to be some dissonance, because that's what, leaders have to navigate all types of uncomfortable situations so that the team can go through them a lot more smoothly. And that's as a leader, you're at that vanguard, right? You're at the very tip of the spear, as they say in military parlance. You're at the front, doing sometimes a lot of high level stuff. A lot of times you're in there in the trenches with your folks, but you have to do all these things so that your team can function efficiently and effectively. They're two different things, efficient and effectively. So I think a lot of times people don't consider their leadership until they're asked about their leadership.
Right.
But the good leaders are always thinking about, hey, how am I showing up as a leader? Am I making things easier for my team? And like we said last time, am I doing the hard work so the team can get in there and do their job effectively and efficiently? And am I doing things so that, am I being that role model so people can look up at me and say, okay, I know when I have this dilemma, I can do what my leader did in that situation, paving the way and encouraging them to have these principles so they know how to apply them to their leadership. So it's a hard job, like you say, but I think that a lot of times people will get into a position or promoted into a position and they don't really think about the type of leader they want to be. And I think that's the question, to know what type of leader you want to be and how you actualize that leadership when it's put to the test.
Absolutely. And you just said something made me think it's easy for people standing outside of the responsibility of the decision that needs to be made to say, I would have done XYZ, right? I would do, and there's an air of judgment in that.
Mhm.
But you don't have the responsibility, and so you may not actually know what you would do in that situation because you're not in it, and actually having to, you know, do the calculus for and run the analysis for all the different permutations of what the decisions may lead to. But I think that there is something good in that exercise so that you are thinking about these things ahead of time. I'm actually thinking about the kinds of choices that I would want to make, where I would like to land on the other side. And so here's sort of how I approach this is, what is it that I want to, which of these choices is going to allow me to be closer to the leader that I have laid out that I want to be, to your point, right? What kind of leader do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Which choice is going to move me closer to that? Right? Because my thought is the type of leader that I want to be is one who's looking out for, empowering, taking care of the people that I'm leading, the situations that I am involved in. And so if I'm thinking about these things ahead of time, being consciously aware when the situations present themselves, I'm more likely to be able to stay in alignment with the principles, right, and the guidelines, than if I'm never thinking about it ahead of time. So you're absolutely right in that. The other thing is that a lot of what can come up for you is laid out in, and I'm just going to say this again because this is top of mind, in code of conduct for your organization, right? So some of these things you don't have to decide. You don't even have to decide for yourself. The answer is there for you, right? The answer is there for you. And I'm pretty sure no code of conduct directs you to break the law. Forging signatures is breaking the law. So, right. So if you get down to the essence of what it is you're being asked to do, right? If you go to your code of conduct, it's probably covered in some way. Now, it may not say in the code of conduct, do not forge signatures, but you know, if it says you don't break the law, that's part of the code of
Falsifying
conduct.
documents.
Or right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's there. So there is a set of guidelines. There are principles that are laid out that can help you in making your choices. I want to just quickly touch on sort of why this is important, and then I want to share this example that I have from my course. So part of why this is important is credibility, right? Reputation. And without credibility, without trust, there is no team. And the members of the group that you lead, I'm going to step back from leadership for a second. This group of people that you have been named responsible for, when we're talking team, if you are not credible and not trustworthy, you're going to have difficulty being able to lead them and thus call yourself a leader of them, right? So it's important that you are ethical, that you are consistent in your decision making, that you're transparent, the factors that I laid out. Though it's important that you are consistent with all, I think there were 6 of them, that you are consistent with them because people are watching. And if they don't know that they can depend on you to make decisions in alignment with the principles time after time after time, you're going to have a difficult time with them. The other is, if you are a person of, any sensibilities, consciousness at all, it will start to weigh on you as well, right? Your self-esteem, your ability to show up and be at your best time after time. So those are a couple of reasons why it's important for you to actually be an ethical leader.
I agree. I think that one of the things that we sometimes don't put into the equation is, we talk about it on the periphery a lot, but being able to look yourself in the face when you look in the mirror and say to yourself, I made the right choice. I may not have made the popular choice, but I made the right choice. I think that's, again, one of the situations that you
I
make.
would challenge that, right?
Okay.
The best choice, for this situation with what I have to work with, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Because right and wrong.
Yeah, sometimes you don't have all the information, and
sometimes you don't have all the information,
and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to, what you think is that, look,
it may be right in the moment and not turn out to be right long term. So
absolutely,
yeah.
We see that so many times when we talk about history, things that were right in the moment, but we're looking back. You look at some shows right now, and you're like, "Oh, that didn't age well, did it?"
No.
In the moment, it was, a decision was made, but over time, that it bore out that it wasn't probably the right decision. A lot of times, those things can't, fortunately, some of those things are minor, and we look, and it just causes us a little discomfort. The really bad decisions will cause us pain, if we're going to use that analogy.
Absolutely. So I want to share this assignment. So the
You
assignment,
giving me homework?
Yes, I'm giving you homework. I'm giving you all homework. And so the situation is basically this: there are 4 loan scenarios, and your job is to decide whether or not you would approve or disapprove the loan, right? And so one scenario is someone comes and asks for a loan for a restaurant. You don't think that restaurants are good investments. You're the person that makes the final decision. And so one of your loan officers brings you this loan package, and you say that, you in your head don't think restaurants are good decisions, right? Do you approve the loan or not approve the loan, right? So just one. Another is where you believe, and I'm using these words intentionally, you believe that medical, loaning money for medical for surgeries, right? Let's say it's a medical procedure is the word I'm looking for. So you believe that those are high risk, right? For whatever reason. But your belief is that medical procedures are high risk. Someone comes to you for a loan to get a procedure. Do you approve or not approve the loan? A loan applicant comes to you and they come from a family of deadbeats. Do you approve or not approve the loan, right? And then the last one is someone comes to you for a loan and you just have this feeling. I just have this gut feeling that, this is not somebody I should be making a loan to. All right. And no, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say whether you would approve or disapprove any of those, but it goes to the point. So there are thoughts, feelings, biases, and beliefs wrapped up in this.
Sure.
And are you making your decisions with those things? Are you, again, going back to some set of guidelines, principles that you are using, particularly in business, to help you get to the best answer, right? And so the challenge that I have with my students is they get very focused on the credit worthiness of these situations rather than looking at, if I were to make an assumption that they are credit worthy, what do my thoughts about restaurants have to do with whether or not to approve this loan? All right. What are my biases about people's and coming from families that are failures, right? That none of the people around them are doing well. What are how do my biases play into this? Right. And so in each of the situations, the assignment really is to check yourself, which requires you to be in the moment, to be conscious, paying attention to what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and how that's impacting the way you're making decisions. And if you are making your decisions based on codes of conduct, right? I'm sure in addition to credit worthiness, every lending institution has some guidelines on what we're using to make decisions. And maybe they decide we don't lend to restaurants. That's fine, right? If your company says we don't do that, that's fine. But if your company lends to restaurants all the time and someone comes to you, they bring a package that is sound and you want to deny them just because you don't believe in restaurants, right? That's a problem. That's a problem, right? And so I just share that to say, in each and every situation, you got to check yourself. You got to check what you are bringing to the table and whether or not it's in alignment with particularly codes of conduct in your business, conflicts of interest, right? Where are your conflicts? What does the code say? What else is out there to guide your decision besides how you feel? And here's the thing about feelings in particular, they change every day, right? And how you feel about something today is different than how you felt about it 10 years ago, and probably how you'll feel about it 15 years ago from now, right? So feelings can change, as can your thoughts and beliefs. So if you go around making decisions based on how you feel rather than, as Robert so aptly laid out at the beginning, set of principles, right? Yours, the companies, and where they intersect, how you've thought about this ahead of time, you're going to find yourself being sort of whipped around by the whims of the moment rather than a set of principles, which keeps you from being consistent, not setting an example that others who are watching you can, see as something for them to actually follow as that example. So, final thoughts as we wrap this up.
Well, my final thought for this is everybody's a leader. So know what kind of leader you want to be. Those are my final thoughts.
Oh, that was a mic drop moment.
I didn't mean it to be, but
everybody's a leader. Know what kind of leader you want to be. Absolutely.
People are looking at you all the time. You may not even know it, but people are looking at you. You make decisions all the time, especially if you're a parent, you're a leader. If you're a teacher, you're a leader. you may be a leader in your community and not even know it, because people are looking at you and inspired by you to see you, doing your daily grind every day. So know what type of leader you want to be.
Absolutely. Right. And we all are. And the question is, what kind do you want to be? I love it. And we'll leave it at that. So hopefully, what kind of leader you want to be. And if you don't, we can help you with that. We can help you ask the questions that you need to ask and answer in order to move you to being the type of leader that you want to be. Someone that is not just about the title or the power that comes with the title, but being able to be one of influence and someone who sets great examples, consistent, ethical examples, a person who walks their talk. How about that? You can reach out to either Robert or I or both, and we can have a complimentary conversation with you about how we may be able to help you move forward. And if you're an organization struggling with this and need some help training your leaders to help them ethical, empathetic, and others get to help them get their vision together for what kind of leaders they want to be, along with and in alignment with the organization, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. We want to thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe. We would love for you to continue watching us there. And if you hit the notification bell, you'll get a message letting you know when we are live. So until next time, take care.
Bye now.